What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ink, Drink, Think, Episode 6. Today's a special episode, not only because there's an X in the word 6, but today is an experimental episode featuring the X-Men, because today we are inking each other's pencils on this Episode 6, Part 1. I'm your host, Michael Pickard, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise. Johnny, you're up.
Hey, I'm Johnny. Today I'm inking a drawing of Storm by Nate. So I'm pretty excited by that. He's gone full on like white mohawk Storm. So I think pretty inarguably the best version. So I've not really drawn it before. Excited to get down to that. Tonight I am drinking a Moscow Mule.
Ooh.
I'm going fancier than normal.
Nice.
Because it's not my alcohol.
There you go.
The best way to do it. We're also joined by our other co-host, Nate Wells.
Hey guys, Nate Wells. Today I'm inking a Cyclops drawing that Todd did that I'm really excited to get into. I don't draw Cyclops nearly often enough. I'm a big fan of the character, but this is a good excuse to do it, and I didn't even have to do the groundwork for it, so it's even better. Today I'm drinking Lone Star, proudly brewed in Texas since 1884. This episode is not brought to you by Lone Star, but maybe one day they'll sponsor us.
It's very cheap. Tabasco.
Coming soon.
Yeah, it's very cheap, and I love it. So, yeah, I'm excited to get into this one.
Cool.
Awesome, man. And, of course, our final co-host and friend, Teacher Todd himself, Todd Blackwood.
Hello. I am inking over Michael today. And I guess with me, I consider doing traditional inks, but this piece kind of begs color as far as I'm concerned. And it's symmetrical, and I love the symmetry tool in Procreate. So there's you go.
The pencils.
It's Apocalypse. And it's a character I never would have done on my own. So it's I'm pretty excited. It's one of those characters I was kind of indifferent towards, and now I'm really enjoying. So that's Magneto's helmet behind him with some fire and some smoke. And so here we go.
Can you give us a quick teaser of what you've done so far? Because you gave us a quick taste.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And of course, those are my pencils, so I'm pretty excited to see what you did.
I got into it a little too much almost. So there's the basic body and his initials. Every design I tried to look up of his is different. And he's got some sort of ancient Egypt ties, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I would like to incorporate some motifs of that sort, but I don't know how exactly yet. But I also, let's see here. I've got that going with his costume, and Magneto's helmet is behind him, and I threw in some lightning and the fire and the smoke. And I'm playing around with it a bunch. So,
man, it's admittedly pretty crazy to see my pencils be expressed that way. Like totally different than what I was anticipating. It's so cool.
There's the Magneto helmet.
Wow.
That I did, and I just basically, I of course cheated. I took a photo of off the internet because there's lots of great cosplay or whatever. You can buy a Magneto helmet, and then I just put it into Procreate and painted over it. So there's no photo left underneath there, but I enjoy kind of doing stuff like that. And I love the symmetry tool, meaning that you put a line down the middle and whatever you draw on this side shows up on the other side. I think symmetry is really fun to play with. And when I got the symmetrical drawing, I was like, oh, here we go. Although the fire's not symmetrical. Let's see. Nope, that's not what I want. And then there's the fire. and I basically just did a drawing of the fire.
You're lower.
Yeah, if you
Bring it-
lift,
bring
if you
it
put it a
lower.
little bit lower, we'll be able to see it.
Oh yeah,
There we go.
I did a drawing of the fire once, and then I copied it and put it in layers and did different coloring things, trying to figure out which one was right. And yeah, so I'm playing with a bunch of stuff on it. We'll see. I think this drawing could actually get away from me really fast because I already tried adding an Aztec calendar in there somewhere, and then I was like, wait, what am I doing?
I think we all knew. I think we all knew with this
Excellent.
prompt of inking each other that whoever Todd
Yeah.
got was just gonna go like, oh, the pencils are going this way, and then Todd was gonna hold it, and it was gonna totally judge.
Yeah,
totally go down its own route. But it's awesome, man. It's so
Well,
cool.
It's fun to do it, and I want to make sure I stay true to the drawing, of course. And I think that's the sense of me is like once it stops being Michael's drawing, then I know I'm going too far, that for me, I think there's a time and a place for pushing things, and this is going to be more of a Frank Miller, Klaus Janson collaboration than a John Byrne, Terry Austin collaboration in that sense. But you still got to stay true to the story that's being shown in the pictures. So you got to have the Magneto's helmet. You got to have you got to know it's Apocalypse, and you got to have the fire and the smoke. And you can, like I said, I think his costume is so interpretable that I think there's lots of stuff you can play with if you want to. But I'll have to wait and see if it feels right or not. You got to have the tubes in the arms. Got to have the A's for kind of like Galactus. Got to be probably a little bit of Kirby something going on in there. But yeah. So, anyways.
Well, it looks fantastic, man. Like I'm so stoked to
Yeah.
see it in practice. And
Cool.
of course, finally, as I said, I'm Michael Pickard, and tonight I'm going to be inking over Johnny's Wolverine. So if I switch the camera here and show you guys what I'm working on, I have this incredible Weapon X out to play around with.
Yeah.
This is the why is that upside down? This is the base print that I'm working on, but I have it printed out on Bristol at a lower opacity for my actual inking. But I have the secondary print out for reference, so I know exactly what Johnny was envisioning with the piece.
Well,
Nice.
that's smart. I didn't do that. That's smart.
That is smart.
Yeah.
That's good.
I don't always think, but when I do, I have some good ideas.
I printed Todd's pencils out in royal blue, and I just hope it works.
Oh man, I'm petrified still. Even like this is at like I think this is 7% opacity on Bristol, and I'm still concerned that when I scan it in, I might not be able to get rid of all of the light bluish gray in the background. But
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
I
You'll be
have
able
some
to do that.
Photoshop experience, so we should be good on
I
that
was
front.
pretty worried about that. When I sent it over, I was like, shit. When I sent it first, I was like, that's really dark blue. Most of the time, I don't even use like a blue line like pencil like setup on the iPad. I'll just like get any like I even use like an inking pen a lot of the time, and I'll just be like, all right, just make that kind of somewhere around blue. And I sent it to you, and it was so dark, so close to black anyway.
No, it's good, man. I actually this first print was 15% opacity, and so when I printed it,
Right.
this was also like a test to see how much blue would show up on the page when I printed it, and that's when I
Yeah.
scaled it back down to the 17, and then so this is the truth of my genius. It all came from the test print. And then I was like, oh, I can keep this as reference while I'm drawing to make sure I see what I'm doing. So in truth,
Yes.
I'm not as smart as I played it off as, but
That's good.
That
Though.
makes sense to me, though. That's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so anyways, guys, clearly we're doing the X-Men, a fantastic group of characters. And for this opening statement, I have to ask the question, who is the greatest X-Men and why is it Cyclops?
Because he's the leader.
Okay. Well, I mean, are you all going for Cyclops?
I have to.
No.
I do.
No.
I think you
Okay,
can make an
because
argument for every character, really.
Well, I said right at the beginning that my answer is going to piss a lot of people off because it is the boring answer. All of my answers for anything X-Men related are going to come from when I read X-Men a lot as a child. So, Wolverine. Wolverine is the best one.
It's Wolverine, right?
It is
yeah,
Wolverine.
Johnny.
Of course it
it's
is.
Wolverine.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
Of course it's Wolverine.
Yeah,
Like,
it's Wolverine.
anyone who says it isn't, they're liars. They're kidding
kidding.
themselves.
Yeah.
They're
No,
idiots.
that's true. That's true.
Listen,
Oh, so
I'm just
am
gonna
I-
be a purist. I don't think Wolverine is truly an X-Men character. He's a Hulk character. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't believe that.
Oh no.
When was the last time you was at? What, once in the beginning? No, man, you're kidding yourself. You're living a lie, Mike. You okay?
Mike.
You're living a lie?
Hashtag Wolverine is not an X-Man. Fight me.
Oh, man. He's literally the X-Men. He's the basis for reading it. He's the way you get into it. You're like, okay, I see. There are other characters, I guess. Let me see what
And
they're
that
about.
probably has to do with like when the three of us at least grew up, like with the movies, because like Wolverine was the main character of those movies.
Yeah.
And by then in the comics, like he was the main character almost like of the comics. Certainly the coolest. I mean, I'm a Wolverine guy. He's my second favorite comic book character of all time, probably.
Same.
Right.
Behind
He's at
Batman
least
for me.
closely tied with Batman for me for number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
It's
it's
funny,
hard not
you
to
guys-
love Wolverine.
He's a little guy, you know. I'm short, and so I identify with him.
Same. You
Yeah,
gotta root for the little guy.
If we're all short here,
I'll
I'm
tell-
not that tall either, and I definitely relate to the fact that he's a stumpy dude.
I'm actually very tall.
Damn it, Todd.
tall Blackwood, you know.
It's funny because I had to think about it, and I was like, wait, how did I get into Wolverine? And I realized I got into Wolverine really strange. I have a strange answer that I don't think about that much, but it was because I was taking a train trip, and I was in like 4th grade, I want to say, and I bought Secret Wars like number 5, and so I got into Wolverine via Jim Shooter and Mike Zeck, of all people. And
I love Mike
Wolverine,
Zeck.
Wolverine, for some reason, stuck out in this issue with every superhero being combined. I was like, who is this Wolverine guy? He's great. I'd seen him, but I couldn't figure out what he was, and I was sort of indifferent. But I think I was starting to get a sense that the X-Men were an interesting book. And that was when I started checking out what was going on with the X-Men. And it ended up being a great time to get into the X-Men because they also started reprinting and doing classic X-Men comics, meaning they were reprinting the classic Claremont Cockrum stuff with new covers by Arthur Adams, which are iconic as far as I'm concerned. I think those, more than anything else, probably is where Image, whole careers were built off those covers that Arthur Adams did for classic X-Men. And I copied those. Huge influence on the costume designs of Image, everything that they were doing initially. But anyways, so it was, for me, seeing the first X-Men movie, I just couldn't believe how much Hugh Jackman actually looked like Wolverine. I was just like, you gotta be kidding. Like, they nailed it. I never thought I would see anything like that. I would try to tell people about Wolverine, and everybody just look at me with this like glazed over like.
Yeah, and that was before like Hugh Jackman was like super big. Like he looked kind of like a normal burly, hairy guy.
Through different changes, huh?
Not that I don't like where he ended up.
Human growth hormone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, allegedly.
Allegedly.
There's that Barry Smith episode or issue of X-Men that he drew, like 204 or something. It's like a Wolverine centered story, and I just think like he looks exactly like Hugh Jackman in there, or Hugh Jackman looks exactly like the drawings. Crazy.
Well, I was thinking I will concede a little bit, Mike, that I have often thought that Wolverine he doesn't fit very much in the X-Men books because do like his whole thing. Like his whole thing is he has those big fucking claws and he cuts people up, and he can't do that in a standard X-Men book because they don't.
Even
You
these
don't have
days?
that happening. You can't. You don't have like Nightcrawler running about and Cyclops doing his thing, and then like in the middle of it, Wolverine is just cutting people to pieces. That doesn't happen in those books. So I will admit that I think he's at his best when he's like in his own book.
Yeah, for me, I completely agree with that, especially because like Wolverine has served as an Avenger. He's been his own solo character. He's been an X-Men. Um, he's teamed up with Spider-Man on dozens of occasions. To me, he's such a standalone character who just happens to be a mutant that
Yeah.
it's hard for me to reconcile him as a mutant, or I mean, as an X-Men. But he definitely
Yeah, I know what
is.
you
Like
mean.
he's of course like the protagonist of all the films. Like he is the coolest. He is the most fun. But for me, I'm gonna make the argument that it is Cyclops, and that's because not only is he a great leader, niche character in the way that Captain America and Superman are, but Cyclops in more recent years has taken on some of Magneto's philosophies and qualities, and at one point they were actually teammates and opened up their own mutant school together. But I think that leads into character growth, which is something we've talked about before in comics, that it's hard to get growth in a character in mainstream books because they always have to revert to a status quo. But Cyclops, particularly in recent memory, has gone from being the prodigal son of Xavier, this star pupil, this leader. He embodies the Xavier philosophy to a T. Has kind of become a grayer character over the past couple years in realizing that their cause might be hopeless. Like maybe humans can't accept the mutants for who they are. And
Yeah, I
think
do like
as-
that. He definitely has a lot more growth than a lot of other comic characters.
Yeah, and I think being that he is a mutant, and in Marvel that means something. He's not just another superhero. He's an outcast. He's hated by the public. I think
Right.
it's really fantastic that if you were to set if you were to describe the X-Men as a book series, he'd most likely be the protagonist. Just out of that standpoint of him like learning about the villains, Magneto in this case's philosophies on their struggles, and then at some point siding with him, and then you have the narrative cliche of like the hero sides with the villain, and then realizes the villain's not 100% right. I think that for those reasons, Cyclops might be the best X-Man.
It's still Wolverine though. Sorry, man.
I do like Cyclops, and I feel like
You
he's
make
really
a good point.
he's really underserved, I think, in the non-comics media. He's really underserved in the movies, and
Yeah.
I do really like Cyclops in the X-Men animated series. I think he's really good, but also X-Men Evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really
That's-
like
yeah.
Cyclops in X-Men
good
Evolution
stuff.
of all places. The teenage X-Men story, but I think he's really great
Sure.
in that show. He's got some attitude, he's got real character. He's not just like the Boy Scout to Wolverine's bad boy.
Yeah,
And I think it's really easy to kind of make him that character. Like this is like the good guy, and he's the leader because he's the good guy. And of course, Jean's gonna end up with him and not Wolverine. But you root for Wolverine.
right.
It's like no, in X-Men Evolution, you're also rooting for Scott.
Poor Wolverine.
Poor Wolverine, sad Wolverine meme.
Well,
Oh yeah, poor Wolverine. This character who wasn't even originally an X-Man, who becomes the star and leads all the
Yeah.
movies and gets
Yeah.
his own
They were
solo
gonna-
stories.
you know that they were going to write Wolverine out of the book? Have you guys heard that story?
No.
Yeah. They didn't know what to do with Wolverine, and they were going to write him out. And John Byrne came on the book, and John Byrne's Canadian, and he was like, "You're not going to get rid of the only Canadian character and superhero in comics." And so he supposedly, the story goes, he made it his mission to make Wolverine the most popular character on the team and like really emphasized him. So in a way, like he's probably directly responsible for a lot of Wolverine's popularity. But yeah, there's all kinds of interesting stories about where those books and characters were gonna head and then what didn't happen and happened instead. I know Sabretooth was originally written as Wolverine's father.
Oh.
And that was always the intention. Yeah. You guys
Well,
haven't heard
that's
that
weird,
before?
because wasn't he originally an Iron Fist villain?
Yeah.
So what were they going to do it after that?
Yes. Well, I forget now, but I can look it up.
I
know
guess
he
it must
was
have been
one-
after that, yeah. I guess they must have then
Well-
been like, let's incorporate him into X-Men, let's make him
Yeah.
Wolverine's father. Yeah.
Here's what changed is John Byrne left the X-Men and they had like 50 more issues mapped out, and then they had to scrap a bunch of storylines. Also, they weren't going to kill off Jean Grey. That was completely Jim Shooter actually made them redraw that whole Death of Phoenix story.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't kill her off initially. She was going to be essentially lobotomized, and
God.
everybody was going to be really
Jesus.
upset about it. And then apparently Jim Shooter saw the issue and was like, "No, you guys can't do this," and made them go back and redraw like half of the book. And so you can look it up. You can look up an entirely different issue that was drawn. And they were going to have a big Avengers and Ultron crossover after that, Doctor Doom. And then there were going to be these hints that Jean Grey's powers were coming back, and there was going to be a big showdown on Magneto's asteroid in space. And then Wolverine was going to get married to Mariko, and Sabretooth was going to kill Mariko, and Wolverine was going to kill Sabretooth, and that was going to be that. I think there was more, but I forget. Yeah. You can find the notes online of all the stuff they had mapped out. Anyways, I think I digress. What were we talking about? Cyclops.
Oh, we were just talking about greatest X-Men, and of course it circles itself
Yeah.
back around to Wolverine because he's the fan favorite
Yeah.
and he's the most popular and blah, blah,
He's the
blah.
best.
We had a joke.
Yeah.
There was a joke. Shout out to my college roommates. There was a joke that we used to goof around about. Actually, on a walk to the comic book shop, this came up. We were pitching how, of course, at the Xavier School, not every student is an X-Man. And so,
Yeah.
what would be some terrible powers to have at the Xavier School that would technically allow you to attend the school, but that wouldn't classify you as an X-Men material character? And the one that stuck out for years, to me at least, was shout out to my roommate Judah, who said this one: "You can turn invisible, but only when you sneeze." So that was the mutant
Yeah,
power
that's
that
shit.
that was like one of the mutant powers that we deemed good enough to enter the mutant school, but terrible in terms of being a combatant militant force member.
Yeah.
Guys, inking each other's pieces might be the greatest decision we've ever done. I've
Oh,
never
man.
Yeah, this is weird, man.
It's so
Yeah.
weird. I've never inked anybody else's
Are you
pencils
good?
before, and
Me neither.
it's really making me evaluate how I draw and especially how I ink, like, because I'm so used to placing lines down based off how I envision something, but now
Yeah.
looking at this drawing and putting down my lines, I'm like using my normal techniques for different purposes, and it's very intuitive and mind-boggling. I don't know why or how this is happening, but I'm not complaining.
Is it working?
Oh yeah, I'm loving it so far.
That's
I'm
awesome.
focusing so much more on mark making than I usually do. I usually don't give a shit what the marks actually look like.
Yeah.
I'm like
That's
actually
awesome.
paying attention to what my brush is doing. Yeah, this is actually like a really good exercise.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really thought like when I when I broke into comics after I graduated college, is what I thought I was going to do like 3 years ago. I was like, I'm going to be a penciler. I'm going to have like a really great relationship with an inker, like Jim Lee and what's his name? What's the guy's name that inks Jim Lee?
Scott Williams.
Scott Williams. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alex Sinclair colors. Yeah, I thought that I was going to find that, or I was like, I'm going to find like a super young 20-year-old Klaus Janson, and we're going to just take over. And then I learned really quickly that if I was going to actually make a portfolio, I was going to have to ink myself. So, and it's actually funny that it's October because I spent October of 2017 teaching myself really how to ink. I had drawn with like microns and stuff before that, but that was the year and the month that I was like, I'm just going to spend this entire month drawing every day with nothing but a brush. I broke out with a pen every once in a while, but mostly it was these, and I didn't even have good brushes. It's like brushes I got at Michael's because I live in like a really crappy place with no actual art supply store anymore. It was really interesting to have to kind of concede what I thought at the time was a concession of like, well, I'll have to ink my own stuff. And now it's funny because I would never pencil a book now.
Yeah.
You know.
Wait, what do you mean you wouldn't pencil a book?
I would never just pencil a book.
Oh, you mean you wouldn't? You would never not ink yourself.
Yeah.
As long as you have a choice, I assume. Is that what?
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. If they were like, draw Action Comics, but we just want you to pencil, we hate your inks, I'd be like, okay. But this is interesting. This drawing that I'm doing now, because of both sides of it, inking and penciling. I never thought that I would just ink something ever in my entire life.
Yeah, same.
Because it's hard. Yeah, it's hard for me to envision any of you guys being inked by somebody else. In other words, like I think you guys are all really good ink renderers and have your own unique style to it. And it's part of. There's people who are great pencilers, but not necessarily good at inking themselves. But I don't think I'm. It would be. I almost printed this out just to see what physical inks would look like by me these days. I should draw something physically, but for me, like this is kind of my domain. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, I appreciate the compliment saying that one, we're good mark makers, but I wonder if that's something of our generation too, of being like, oh, I'm gonna pencil and ink my own work, as opposed to like more traditional schools of thought of kind of like where Nate was coming from with, I'm gonna be a penciler and I'll hand off my work to someone I collaborate with, you know?
Yeah. I thought that that's just how you did it on any book, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty much the same. I was starting out thinking I was going to be a penciler.
Yeah. And that's how it did work for a long time. So there's reason why you thought that, you know.
And I used to be really happy with my pencil work. And when I would try and ink it, because I wasn't using materials that I actually really liked, it was mostly like markers and pens, I would always 100% of the time ruin the drawing. And when I actually switched to using brushes as well as nibs that have like much more life to the line, I started. Well, I shouldn't say I started liking the drawings. They were still terrible. They were still god awful, and I was ruining the pencils. But after kind of grinding for a month or two, I still wasn't comfortable with, but I started actually understanding what I was supposed to be doing with ink.
Yeah.
Because I used to just do finished pencils, and I would try to, as meticulously as I could, draw every line super slowly, because it's got to be exactly what I penciled.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just draw it in ink if you're an inker.
Yeah, I had a big problem with that for ages because, like, before I found any, like, any way of drawing digitally, I was just like trying to find a way to finish my work. Like, my tutors in uni were telling me, like, your work is great, you're a good mark maker, but you got to find a way to, like, finish it. And I would always, like, do the same as you. Like, up until then, I was just like, yeah, well, you finish it by inking over it. And I was you just did, every time I would, like, bring it back. And I didn't know what my tutors were saying for a while, but they would, like, look at it and be like, yeah, you lose all the life in the drawing when you ink it.
Right.
Because you're just going over the same lines. Like, you have to... Yeah, that's why I think it's good, for me at least, it works, like, drawing digitally, because you can, like, drop the opacity so much that it is like drawing it again, and you don't always super clearly see the lines you're inking over, so you can kind of have fun with it a bit more, and you're still creating. You're not just sort of...
A big thing for me was, like, dropping the term inking. I decided, not that I necessarily don't like the term, but I was like, I need to not think about it like I'm inking, quote unquote, something. I need to lay things out, figure out the problem in pencils, and then draw it in ink. So now I think about it like the finished drawing, of course, is the ink drawing. And so why am I actually drawing it like it should be presentable in pencil when I know it's going to be inked later, which is why my pencils are super loose now, because I want the drawing to be in ink. And it was exactly the opposite when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, intuitively, I know exactly what you're saying. There's different approaches to inking.
So
yeah, and it's interesting.
Sorry,
Mike, go on.
I was gonna say on that topic, because I think it's now, having done it for the first time and realizing, like, wow, like, I'm really enjoying somebody else's pencils being inked by my mark making. Are there any penciler inker duos that you're particularly a fan of? And one that for me is really inspiring and is one that I constantly reference for my own mark making, like inking my own work, is Dennis Cohen and Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What did they work on together?
They recently did The Question with Jeff Lemire.
Did they?
Yeah.
Really?
And
wow.
If you've never seen Bill Sienkiewicz ink Dennis Cohen, I think it's absolutely worth a Google. A goog, as Nate says.
Give it a goog.
It's absolutely astounding. Like, you get the energy of Bill Sienkiewicz's pen, but the structure of Dennis Cohen. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I really enjoy their work together.
Huh.
Yeah, actually, a big book, it's funny that you say Bill Sienkiewicz, because a book that I had, it was just one issue when I was a kid, was, I think it was from the Wolverine title, but it was penciled by John Buscema and inked by Bill Sienkiewicz. And I remember reading it when I was like 10 or whatever and going, wow, look how sketchy this book is. But all of the structure underneath the inks are there because an absolute legend penciled it. And then this super experimental younger guy came in and just, went crazy with a pen on top of it. And
so that was an issue of Wolverine? Is that right?
I think it was from the Wolverine title. I still have the book. I could pull it out to make sure. But I remember
the cover is him fighting Sabretooth. Is that
the
right?
cover is Sabretooth and him in the snow, and Sabretooth is like on top of him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's when he had like the eye patch, I think.
Right.
Yeah, when he was patched. That's when, that's the issue where Sabretooth comes to beat him up every year on his birthday.
Yeah. Nobody kills you but me.
Yeah. Which is such a funny concept. He's every birthday, you're like, fuck's sake, he's going to come back. He's going to beat me up on my birthday.
Yeah, that's exactly the story. Yeah.
Todd, do you have a lot of experience in terms of working over other people's pencils?
No.
When you have been published in the past and worked in the past, have you primarily just been a penciler?
Yeah. And let's see, I gotta think. I have ghosted some layouts for various people on occasion who are having trouble with layouts, with page layouts. But that was, I don't know. I ended up doing too much of it for free, and it never paid well enough, and it's really hard work. Sometimes there was some like detective comic, and there was some really complicated people, like 4 people in a hotel room, and it was kind of a CSI thing. And I did like 2 or 3 pages of that, and then I was like, oh man, I got to do this on my own work and not for other people, because otherwise I'm doing all the hard work for them in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really. Here's my problem. I'm not a penciler, like fundamentally. I can pencil for myself. And I think with the right inker, that's awesome. But I would say at best, even if I was a really good penciler, there'd be nothing special going on if I got really good at penciling. And I just don't think that it's where I would head anyways. I don't know if I just got off subject here exactly, but
No, you're fine.
yeah, I can tell a story. I've done a lot of, I've done and do storyboarding. So it's funny for me to, like, my Instagram, I consider myself kind of a pinup artist right now. Only because I haven't really shown anybody the stories I've been working on. But I wonder if people will be surprised that I can actually tell a story. So, or draw backgrounds. I never put backgrounds in my drawings, but that's going to change. So, but I'm also trying to familiarize myself with digital stuff right now so that I can build things digitally. So I was getting up to speed on a program called UMake, where you can construct things digitally, and I'd like to do digital sculpting, and it's mostly just for reference. But yeah. What was the question again?
I was asking if you had much experience in terms of inking over anybody else's work.
Oh. No.
No.
To answer your question, no.
and I think there's a good reason for that, because I don't think anybody ever saw my stuff and said, I'd love to see you ink over me. And if they did, they probably were like, oh, that didn't turn out the way I expected. I think I could do, I don't know. It's just not my strength. It's my strength on my own work, and I think in a way I could paint over people's work now digitally. But I don't think I have anything to bring to the table as a run-of-the-mill inker, so to speak. I wish that weren't the case in some ways, but that's okay. And I've also, I've had bad luck with inkers inking over my stuff who really, God bless them, but it's like I can't figure out where I'm not giving them the right information, or if they're just the wrong inker for me. But I think I also, early on, I didn't know you couldn't ink yourself, and I just would kind of do these loose pencils and then just start inking. And I actually think I was on a certain path that was really working for me. And then I got told that that's not how comics work, and you can't do that. You can't make a living unless you're a penciler. And in a way, I feel like I think it's every artist's job to figure out what advice is right for them and what's not, and not just follow blindly. It's okay to listen, but you don't always have to agree. And I think that's one time I should have said thanks, but no thanks. But I took their advice and started scaling back on my inking and started trying to become a penciler. I think that was a fork in the road where I went the wrong direction. And anyways, I I got told by another professional at one point that my whole problem was I hadn't figured out how to ink myself, and when I did that, I was going to find my voice as an artist. And I think that was the I've gotten two great advice that made big changes in my work, and that was one of them. And the other was think through your drawings before you draw. But for me, like figuring out how to ink myself and what that means, and just doing what feels right as opposed to what everybody else expects, or oh, this will get me work at Marvel. I had to kind of quit chasing that mirage. And some people are really built for it, but I'm not one of them. That's how I look at it. Would you guys, like, if you guys got asked, if Nate, if you were like, or Johnny or Michael, if you were like, hey, we think you'd be a great inker for the next 10 issues of the Avengers, would you guys jump on it? Is there a dream job you guys would turn down? I won't pencil that unless I get to ink myself. Or would you be like,
I mean, if someone told me that I could ink something from like any big company, I would not be like, no thanks, I'm a penciler. I like to do my own bit. No, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, I would jump right on that. Yeah.
yeah?
I mean, anything like that, I would just be like, yeah, I'll give it a go. Why not?
So I was surprised. Like Craig Thompson is a guy. You guys know the guy that does blankets.
Oh yeah.
And probably other stuff too. But he's a guy that really, like, I paid attention to what he was doing because I was kind of shocked. He was the first guy I know before he, I think, got famous. He got hired to do some Fantastic Four miniseries. And I think he got like halfway through the first issue or something like that. And then just was like, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm going to quit. And I was shocked by that. I was like, and I didn't, this is all stuff I read in retrospect in interviews, but I felt like he had a real sense of what to say no to. And I really admired that. And then he went, and he was the first guy that I paid attention to who said, you don't have to get your name out there working on Wolverine or Batman and then carry that audience over and do Sin City. You can go straight into very personal work and do it your way, and be successful at it. Like his books. I haven't really kept up on what Ollie's been doing, but Blankets was a big deal when it came out, and I admire that as a guy that I think could have probably made a very comfortable living in mainstream comics. He chose not to do that and do personal stuff, and had the foresight to make some sacrifices or whatever you want to call it. But he what it really was is confidence. You know, he knew he was good. He knew he had something going on that he didn't want to get distracted or go down a road he couldn't get away from, maybe. But I find that impressive and unheard of, at least at that point. Like, who else has, gotten a big opportunity and said, this isn't quite right for me? That's super unusual.
Yeah. You actually, you said something I found... You said something earlier that I found quite interesting, that it was one of the lessons someone taught you that you found invaluable. There was always think through your drawings before you draw.
Yeah.
To what extent do you do that? Because sometimes I feel like some of my best work comes from me starting with the pencils. And I think maybe it helps when I'm drawing digitally, so you can just completely delete everything that goes wrong. But I sometimes don't think through what I'm going to do at all before I start. I just start working. And working, and eventually it starts to become something.
Well, I actually should walk that back a little bit, because now I'm a hybrid of both.
Right.
I both think through exactly what it is I'm going to do, but one thing that's great about digital is you can make mistakes and go back over and over and over, and you end up going, oh, that's interesting. I didn't expect that to happen, so I'm going to go with it, which is really hard if you're drawing analog.
Yeah, definitely. I always think through the idea I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
Even if it's like just a straight character character piece, I always try and think about exactly what I'm trying to say with it.
Yeah. Well, the best
But there are
artists
definitely times where I just improvise.
Say that again.
There are definitely still times where I just completely improvise, though.
Yeah. I think for me, I don't know about you, but like for me, my part of my problem is I would start to draw and be like, well, I'm gonna draw the Thing from the Fantastic Four, but it was like I didn't know exactly where I was. I was like, I wonder what this is gonna look like.
Yeah.
And I would say that at least if you're, sometimes that's okay, but if you sit down to draw a traditional drawing, say of Batman or the Thing, you got to know what you're going for.
Yeah. Oh, I
As
definitely
far
do
as
that. Yeah.
construction goes, I spend more time
Yeah.
maybe thinking about drawing than drawing, and I do, you know, I also will sit back and from a drawing and start really going through. I do mental gymnastics in my head trying to figure out what I need to fix about a drawing. It feels like
Oh,
math
yeah.
problems to me, or fixing your
Yeah.
spelling. It's all kind of in the editing. And
Yeah.
I actually, I'll tell you a really funny story about why, about who said that to me, was Michael Golden, who I'm a huge fan of. And
Mhm.
he was, I went to a lot of conventions from a young age, and he was never at them. He seemed or had the reputation as being kind of reclusive. And yet I think one day, probably his manager or somebody made him start going to shows and putting his face out there. And
Right.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, this guy's been this enigma for a long time, and now he's right there. So I saw him a couple times and was really scared because he's one of those artists that's just legendary. It'd be, to
Yeah.
me, it's kind of like meeting Marlon Brando as an actor. There's actors,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
Marlon Brando. But finally, I approached him. Uh, well, I approached him once, and then I got more friendly towards him like a year later. But the first time I approached him, I said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have a question. Do you keep a sketchbook? How much do you practice drawing? In other words, I was like, is there a really cool sketchbook out there? Of Michael Golden that nobody sees. So I said, do you keep a sketchbook? And he goes, fuck no, I hate drawing.
That's amazing.
And I went, and the look on my face must have been like, wow. And he looked at me, and he probably knew that was coming, but he was like, look, this is what I mean when I say that. He said, I think through every single thing he goes, I spend as little time as drawing as I possibly can because I hate drawing and it's a job and it's work. But he said, here's what I do is I think about drawing all the time, and I think through my drawings completely before I start drawing. And that way, as soon as I start drawing, they just go, and I would say there's no other artist that's more precise than him. So there's a real light bulb went off over my head when he said that. I went, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And for me, I really think that there was a lack of thought in my drawings. So for me, that really helped. I really started thinking, I'm not thinking this through. I'm not thinking through the design. I'm not thinking through what works and what doesn't. And it's almost like I was wearing out my fingers drawing because I didn't know which direction I was going.
Right.
But if I
Yeah.
thought things, a lot of times the drawings that were better that I did came easier, and I think that was because I started thinking them through really carefully. So I consider that really good advice. And a lot of times, if a drawing is going sideways, I will stop and go, okay, I didn't think this through very carefully.
Yeah.
I have really, I was thinking about this yesterday. I have some really funny drawings that I don't show people that are like drawings gone wrong. And I thought about doing like an Instagram post of like, here's all my art face plants for 2020 or whatever. I pulled one out. I have a Daredevil drawing I'm really proud of, but I as I said, I've been going through a bunch of my art, and I found the first version of that drawing I did, and it's so bad. Like, it's so funny to look at and think that I think that the difference between before and now is I would do that drawing and it wouldn't turn out right, and I would kind of give up. And
Right.
but I remember thinking, no, I can do this. I can get this right, but I'm gonna have to get back up and start over, or really look at it and figure it out.
Yeah.
Which for some reason, I you can say that, but the doing the work is, I don't know. It's something that you got to figure out how things work, and then you can apply that knowledge, I guess.
Yeah, I've had to do that once or twice, and it's tough to make yourself just start all over again with a piece, but it is worth it.
Only once or twice?
Yeah.
That's a good track record, dude.
Yeah, because usually I just say, like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna throw that. I'm like, I'd rather throw that away and start something new again. And then once or twice I've been like, no, you know what, I'll give this a go again. Like, just start up again. Do you know what, though? It's interesting. Everything you said there, Todd, has kind of made me a convert. I think, thinking about it, I also spend a lot of time thinking about drawing. A lot more time than I do actually drawing, and I draw a lot. So, you know, I think I'm probably somewhere in the middle as well. And I think it comes with a little bit of an egotistical nature as well, because I spend a lot of time thinking about characters and being like, here's what I would do with that character. Like, I'll just be daydreaming in the middle of the day, like, here's how I would do the thing. He's supposed to be like a monster, like stuff like that. Like, I spend a lot of time just thinking about that.
Egotistical meaning like kind of competitive, or
egotistical, like, I guess
could
there's
do that better.
Yeah, there's like an unpleasant part of my brain that I
right.
silence by being like, you know what, they're doing this character wrong at the moment. I read a comic recently where they're doing this wrong, and I would do it so much better. That kind of thing.
I think that can be good for the most part, because I know Frank Miller and John Byrne were big rivals, but it sounded like they were having a lot of fun being rivals, and I like that kind of competition. I like, but when Byrne and Claremont and at the end of the X-Men had a falling out, I know they were also competitive, but I think in a bad way. I think in a way where they were trying to show each other up, and almost to prove the other sucked. And I don't know if I got my history right there, but like I do think there's that vibration of like, that's not how you do the character. You should do it like this. Like, that's cool. That's why you love these characters, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's something that I would keep. It's a voice that I keep quiet, but I think is useful.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't say aloud to everyone about how, you know, all of these famous people suck and I'm incredible, but it's useful for pushing yourself.
Well, the problem is you might get somebody might say, all right, put your money where your mouth is.
yeah.
So
like, oh, what? No, I don't know.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Runs away.
Well, hey, do you guys want to do some spotlights then?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to zoom in on Nate because Nate looks incredibly far in his piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the drawing was done, so it's pretty easy to just kind of go in. It's really interesting though, because it's, you know, a lot of this anatomy in here is just not how I would draw it. Because usually like these muscles are not things that I really focus on. And so it is kind of fun to go in and figure out what they look like without reference. It's a funny thing where, like, because I've never inked anyone before anyone else, that is, like, you do have to kind of trust the penciler to, like, know what's going on. And that's fully what I'm doing right now, which I trust Todd, like, 100%. And it looks great. But yeah, it's fun to like find the places where you can kind of like add your little stamp. Which I feel like if I was inking for like a regular superhero book, maybe you shouldn't even go in and add your little your visual identity somewhere. But for the podcast, I feel comfortable, while still doing Todd's drawing, going in and making it, like a real collaboration. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's what this is it's a collaboration. I still have
Yeah,
no idea what I'm going to do for the background, but
Yeah, I've been
I look
approaching it
forward
the
to
same
whatever
way as
you
you, mate. Oh, sorry, go on, Todd.
Well, I wasn't saying anything important, just saying that I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
yeah, I mean, this drawing is, I liked it when I saw it initially, and here, like, just drawing on top of it, I'm like, man, there's some good stuff. Definitely, like in the,
Good.
like I said, in some of the lighting that you did, there's definitely like a lot to learn in here.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it's got the initial light source coming from the visor, the beam,
Mhm.
but there's backlighting indicated if you want to look at it that way. But I do feel like it's open to interpretation, and I'm one of those people that like backlighting is like, oh man, I probably play with it way more than I should, but I still think that it's such a nightmare.
Yeah,
But
it's for me. It's a hard thing to do. So I'm glad that you figured it out for me.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Oh, absolutely,
I
yeah.
could see it being confusing and not entirely sure I knew what I was doing when I did it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, in the times or the instances in the drawing where I don't even know how I would tackle it, I'm just completely trusting that you've done the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, there's moments where I'm like, okay, I know what's going on here, so I can kind of, like, I know how I would tackle that. And then there's, like, other instances where I'm like, like, I'm not exactly sure. Not that I don't know what you meant, but I just don't know how if I was drawing this, how I would do it. And so I'm just fully going over what you did and trying to make it unique to how I would do it. Like if you mapped out a drawing that I was going to do, which is like, I guess that's a stupid thing to say, because that's essentially what we're doing here.
I know what you mean. I know what you're saying. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense to me.
Keep that train rolling. I'll move over to Todd.
Yeah.
Nate,
Yeah, I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, let's see how crazy this got.
I don't know if you guys can see.
Ooh.
So I'm probably going to do a couple of versions. Like the helmet keeps fitting into the design somehow. So I've actually did a duplicate of the helmet. So there's one behind him and one on top of him, and I'm playing with the opacity because the lines keep syncing up. Like, see how the helmet went right into his head? Like, I keep feeling there's a parallel with the designs, and you might have to explain to me the connection between Magneto and Apocalypse. But I want him to look like an Egyptian pharaoh or something. So I'm probably deviating from Michael's drawing at this point a little more than I had planned. But I think that I have a feeling there's going to be multiple versions of this that I'll do. I also watched Cape Fear recently, so some of those lines are based on Robert De Niro's tattoos on his body.
Oh, nice.
Right there.
Excellent.
Well, Todd,
Actually,
for the two things. One, there's no connection between those two characters except for the fact that they're both X-Men villains. But
there isn't.
Secondly, the Cape Fear connection is perfect because I had titled this piece "Apocalypse Now," with the fire and the smoke and evoking the themes of that movie a little bit, at least the iconography.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be really funny to put all those tattoos on his body somehow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what they were, but it's like
All of his-
Vengeance
He had kind of like shitty tattoos.
Oh, but they're
They're,
so
like,
weird and
religious, right?
scary. I love that movie.
That's a
They
great
are-
movie.
Yeah.
They are. but
Counselor.
there's one with like a clown with a gun. I remember thinking, what? And he had comic book pinups on his wall of Black Bolt from the Inhumans and Warlock, I want to say, by Jim Starlin of all people.
Those are some weird pulls.
Yeah, it's such a good movie though. So fun. Did you know that Scorsese and Spielberg actually switched movies? Spielberg was going to make Cape Fear, and Scorsese was going to make Schindler's List. And at the last minute, they both decided they were making the wrong movies, and they switched productions.
Really?
Wow.
I did
Yeah.
not know that. Wow.
Yeah, and Spielberg was going to cast. Wait for this. He wanted to cast Harrison Ford as the lawyer family man, and Bill Murray as Robert De Niro's character.
Oh
That
wow.
was-
Jesus.
That would have been. It's hard for me to see that and not have it be a comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scary, psychotic Bill Murray is. That's interesting. Yeah, and then Harrison Ford said he would do it, but only if he could play the Robert De Niro character. And then it all kind of went out the window, and Scorsese took it in an entirely different direction. But
Wow.
anyways, yeah, something to think about. So, anyways, what? How are you guys? How are the rest of you guys doing?
So, just to continue that path, I'll move on to mine.
Yeah,
And I'm having the time of my life, and I've never
That's
felt this
awesome.
way before. This is absolutely so much fun to do. It might be a
That's
little
looking
bit,
good.
Thanks, man. It might be a little bit weird to
Yeah.
see, just based on the fact that the camera setup is a little bit different right now. But I'm having so much fun illustrating in the hair all over Wolverine's body. And
Oh yeah. I was scribbling that in, and I was like, I don't know whether this is just gonna piss you off or what.
No, it's fun, man. But
Cool.
this is so weird to do, and it's making me think about like how I'm illustrating the forms and how I'm shading it differently than how I would do it for myself on my own
Yeah.
pencils. And so,
I love.
yeah,
that.
I'm really having a blast with this. And Johnny, if you have a book you want
That's
to
good.
pencil, pitch it to me because we could do this together.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah, all right.
I'm really
Yeah.
enjoying working over your pencils. Like I think when
It's
this is
looking cool. Yeah.
when this is done, like I was even considering, like, I was like, you know what, maybe I should just send this to Johnny because I think this is going to be like a really cool thing for both of us, like the collaboration element
Yeah.
of this piece in particular. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's looking really cool. I'm excited.
thanks, man. Yeah, no, this is so much fun, and of course Wolverine is the best X-Men ancillary.
The best
character.
X-Men, yeah.
Yep. hmm
Just best X-Men, period. Stop talking, Mike.
Yep.
Well, he's got a visor, so it's kind of Cyclops-like. But
Oh,
Yeah, there
okay.
you go.
no, I'm having an absolute blast with this, so it's really cool to do.
Good to hear.
Yeah, but then we'll move
Yeah.
on to you, Johnny. Let's check out that storm.
Right. So it's coming along. This is where we're at
Oh.
now.
Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, Nate.
Wow.
Same as Mike. I am really having a
Dude.
good time with this. All of the the sketchy lines you draw, like the swooshy lines, it works very well with how I like naturally will just feather my inks. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I did play
Yeah,
around
man.
with
We gotta collaborate some more. We gotta do like
yeah,
we'll just take
please.
Sin City from Frank Miller and we'll do the next one.
yes, please. I've been like, it's same as what you were saying, Nate. Like, it feels like the work has been taken away. It's amazing. I'm just having fun, like, inking
Yeah.
over. And anytime I'm like, ooh, anatomy stuff like that, I'm like, oh wait, no, that's been done. That's all been fixed. Good. I just get to switch off and just play around with inking it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's looking fantastic, dude.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing the heavy lifting. Yeah, I think I'm gonna add some lightning. Maybe I played around with all black for the background.
Mm.
and then didn't like it as much as your swooshy lines. It didn't feel right. I was gonna like still add some lightning, but it's boring that way. I think it looks a bit wannabe Mignola. I think your background is a lot better. Or you have the, where is it? Let's put it in there. The swooshy lines
that.
you did.
Yeah, I appreciate
Really
that.
So yeah, I'm gonna work with that.
But hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a really great opportunity for all of us to play around and mess with each other's pencils. And I know for a fact that just to continue finishing this piece in part 2, I'm really eager to break out the brush and get into some of the blockier blacking of the image.
Yes.
But so anyways, thanks everybody for checking out this video. Make sure you check out the links in the description below where we have all of our Instagram links. Follow us for our various artistic endeavors. Support us where you can. And of course, stay tuned to this feed because this is only part 1 of a 2-part episode in which we are inking each other's pencils, particularly of X-Men characters. Anyway, guys, this has been Mike Pickard, joined by my crazy, awesome, talented co-host friends, Johnny Wise, Nate Wells, and Todd Blackwood. Stay tuned for episode 2, guys. Thanks.
See ya.
Cool.